Hey guys, welcome back. In this video, we'll be responding or manipulating JSON. So this is going to be a really long video. I hope it's not that long, but it's really tough to do from the beginning because there's a lot of stuff you have to do. Now, since we already made a function, we actually have to manipulate this JSON result. So we'll make a function called function manipulate JSON, okay? And what it'll do is it'll return an option, okay? And it'll return the option of value. So it's possible that it might be empty. And what it'll take in is a JSON reference to the GitHub release. So GitHub release and value. So then we just do manipulate JSON and we'll do GitHub release. Okay, so what I should actually name this is to Towery response. Make Towery response. Okay, so make a Towery response basically. And what we want to do is we want to okay this. So if something, we want to return a thing. Otherwise, we're going to return a JSON thing. So we'll do something like this. So if dot or, I believe, works. So dot or JSON, something like this. Okay, so this is an option, so I guess you don't want to do that. So we will look at the thing over here. So we'll do option rust and read the documentation for this. And we see here that if we do transforms option into a result, mapping some to okay and none to error. So maybe we want to do something like this. So we do okay because maybe we don't want to. Okay, here we go. So okay or else. So okay transforms option to rest else, mapping some to and none to error. So okay or and okay or else, same thing over here, but we don't want to create an error. We want to do something else. So error here, and then we do map. We do a map error. So we get this, and then we do into okay or something like this. This is slightly experiment. Okay, we don't want to use that. Map error. So let's see here. Maps a result into that. So that's probably not what we want to do. Either calls op if the result is error, otherwise returns an okay. And maybe we can get something else here. So if function once takes an error and returns a result. So we can use this to do a lot of stuff here. So if error dot or else to square, we can get an okay again. So we'll do this and then we'll do or else. And then we can just do because it takes in a function, I believe. So if it's an error of 3, then we can take in a certain something here, like a error, and then we just return the okay of that error. All right, because over here we see the square occurs on the x, and then we return okay. So this will be how to do that. So create Towery. Create a Towery response. Not sure if that's the right terminology for it, but we can get started here. This is how you would do some error handling. That is wild, I guess. And let's get started. Because I have done it this way, the code is super clean now compared to before. Now, the Towery release is going to be of this format. So how do we create this JSON format from scratch? By manipulating existing data, which is basically going to be this video. So we can get some things right off the bat here, like the format of it, by doing a release. So let's create the response over here. So the response is going to look like this. So response is equal to this, and now we have GitHub release, tag name as string. And I guess the code is confusing because I copy pasted it, but I'll explain it to you as I am doing this. So this is, a lot of it's from I converted my Python code to Rust, and then I'm converting my master code to the tutorial. So let me explain this really quickly. We get the result, we get GitHub's release, but we need to modify it into our terminology, which looks like this. So we need to have some base JSON before we add these things. We can add these things because this is a list basically, it's a mapping, whereas these three things are actual variables. So over here I have the GitHub release and it's just the tag name. The version is just the tag name and it's as string. So a string can fail or return nothing. So what we want to do, it returns an option actually. So that's why we have a question mark, which means that option will turn none. And down here we convert the option into a result. And if it's an error, we return this as an error, but we turned that error into an okay. So I hope that is clear what that does. But anyways, this way it's so much nicer than the way I had to do it, which I'll show you right now, which is I had to wrap in this error with the option error, and it's not fun at all. At least this way you know where things could have gone wrong. Or I guess you wouldn't know if things went wrong. If things went wrong, you would have to, if you wanted to keep track of if something went wrong here and this function, you would have to expand on this code. But let me stick to the JSON response. So at the end, we actually want to just return some response, okay? But until then, we gotta actually do a lot of stuff. So as you can see here, we have these platforms that are basically hard coded. They come from this URL, but effectively, if you know that these platforms will exist, then you can have something called platforms and you can add the code into it later. So I have created a hash map here, and the hash map is from a string to a vector of strings. So for each extension that corresponds to an operating system, I have a bunch of so for each extension, file extension, it corresponds to a operating system architecture. So Linux 64-bit, Mac 64-bit, Mac ARM 64-bit, and Windows 64-bit. So each of these corresponds to one of those. And I've done it like this so that it's pretty nice. I'm not sure if you could just do const like this, but it's not mutable, so it's fine. And I'm going to correct what I said before. These things are not hard coded. This is just a mapping. So it could be that if this extension doesn't show up, this response won't have it. So it'll still work fine if GitHub release doesn't have this extension. So now what do we want to do? Well, where are these file extensions? Well, if you are reading this API, which you don't actually have to do, I've done it for you. You can see that there's an assets key, and all of these assets are basically those files in a GitHub release. So we would just want to iterate through these assets. And to iterate through these assets, we can, I think I messed something up, but basically we want to be editing it through to this platforms over here. And since it's the JSON, we kind of want to say something too. So let me see here, available platforms. So then we say release response platforms. Okay, so this is how you retrieve something from JSON, which is basically like that. Okay, so you can do platforms, and platforms is an object. And since we want to add to it, I don't know, apparently we don't add to it, so, or we do, but mute isn't required for some reason, which is kind of funny. But we needed to, I still got it as an object mute, so it doesn't really matter. We'll actually try it as object first and then we'll get back to it. So we have this to easily add stuff to response platforms. And now we're going to iterate through every asset. So GitHub release and the assets. But since GitHub release is a value, we need to figure out if this is an array. So we can do as array, okay? And this is returns an option. So we want to use the question mark. And then we want to iterate through it. So we do .iter. All right. And now we're going through all of these assets. And let's just say, because we think that the asset is of the form of a mapping, basically. This is a mapping or a map. So we want to have it as an object. So we do let asset equals, and we'll do asset dot as object. Okay, and again. Now we want to go through all of these platforms available. So platforms available. So how do we go through or iterate for each platforms available? Well, we can use something, since it's a map, you can actually iterate through it. We can do for extension and for platforms. So I know how it sounds, but OS arc, I guess this is a better way to say it. So for in platforms available .iter, and let's say the asset name is something. So for asset equals this, and now we have for asset name. Asset name is a string. Okay, so asset equals asset name as string, question mark. All right, and now we just want to compare it. So if asset name is a string, we just want to say if asset name ends in the extension, okay, what do we do? And if it doesn't end in the extension, does it end with something that is a signature? So if you look here in the thing over here, I guess this video is more for people who are also implementing Tauri server, but it goes to show you if you want to create JSON like dynamically, how much effort it requires, I guess. So now we also want to keep track of these signatures. So now you can do something like this as well. So if asset name ends with, and then we formatted the string, and I'm pretty sure ends with takes in a string reference, so that's why I used this and over here, ampersand. Extension.signature, we want to do make a request signature. So this one actually, if you're coming from the last video, we're going to demo .text. So asset name ends with extension, what do we do? Well, we want to iterate for each of these platforms. So for platform in OS architecture, okay, so for OS arc in this, we want to add the OS architecture into that thing. So to do that, we say this, we say if response of platform that contains a key, and that key is the OS architecture. So if it doesn't contain that key, we want to add that. So we do .platforms.insert, and then we just do OS arc dot to string, because we don't want to move this OS architecture. So we do to string, and then we'll just make it an empty JSON response. Now, you can actually take this another step forward, but then you'd have to duplicate the code, because we could just do something like this here where we do URL and then we do browser URL, but that means that we'd have some code duplication because we're just going to do it here anyway. So we do, okay, and then we do .platform as object mutable, okay, and .insert. And that's kind of why I did use this as a mutable. So let's actually try something like this for now. It might lead to an error, which is exactly what I'm hoping for. But in general, you might want to use mutable here. I'm just not using mutable right now because it might be interesting to see if an error occurs. So what do we have to insert? Well, we have to insert a URL. So URL.toString. I suggest use toString instead of .into because it's very clear what's going on. And what do we want to use? Well, we want to do the browser download URL, and we want to clone this. But in reality, in reality, we want to also ensure that browser URL is a string. So what you actually want to do is set the browser URL somewhere here, up here, let's just say. So let browser download URL equals this. And then we can do it pretty nicely. So then we can get .toString. And what else can we do? We can do the value string of this. And there we go. So we get browser download URL, toString, and a value of the string. And this ensures that browser download URL is actually a string and actually exists. It could be possible that if you just cloned this value, that you wouldn't know if it's a value or not. So that's why you'd probably want to do it like this. Now, what else can I say? So we did browser download URL, toString, because it's a string reference, and we just wrapped around value. So that has added it. And now we can work on what if it's a signature. So if it's a signature, we want to basically get a signature out of it. So as you can see in the expected result, we want an actual signature. We don't want a download link to the signature. We want the actual signature. So how do we get the actual signature? Well, we have to download that URL to that signature. So to do that, we can actually use the text request over here that I've done. So then this create tired response actually needs to take in a client. So we get client, and then we get GitHub URL. So we do client over here. Okay, and now we gotta do it here too. So text request is what I've done. And basically what we need to do is, this is a bit complicated again. So we just want to make a request to the URL. And the URL is over here. So the browser download URL basically. And let's see here. Okay, so we make a request to this download URL and we await, but this is a result that can error out. Okay, so this is where two errors can occur. So, and it doesn't really go nicely with our option. And if you keep it in here, things will get really messy. So what I've done is I've created a helper function called text request. So text request basically makes a request to something and returns either an error or a request error. And it's up to you how to handle it. So as you can see here, we either do question mark, and then the last one's a result or a request error. So we're all good over here. So .text request is over there. We just make a text request. So instead of this, we just make a text request to the URL. And we also need to supply the client. So we'll do client.url. And since this returns a result, we want to match it. And we want to set this equal to something. So if signature equals this, let signature equals a match. So a match return of a result. So we'll do R or S. So if it returns if match of this is okay, then we return that string. Otherwise, we just want to return a new string, so an empty string. All right, and this is basically saying that we have a URL and we're going to download that URL. So we've downloaded that URL here. And if the result works, we just return that string. If it doesn't work, we just return string.new, because it's possible that for some reason we already got this far, so there's no point in messing up the entire response, or at least that's what I believe. It's possible that the signature failed just for that one endpoint. So I don't want to screw everything up just because of that. I want auto update to work for some things, not all things, So we have this. And after this, we can do something else, which is we have to add that signature like before. to all of these areas. So we use that, and for OSARC and that, if OSARC is this, we just add that. So now we just insert something to the signature. So do that, signature.toString, and then value string, and then we just actually have to use this. And we clone the string every single time because otherwise it's a move and that will not be good. So there we go. And at the end, got some response. So we got here, we're good here. And since we're using await, we have to make these asynchronous. So we have to do await, and we do OKR, and then we're good here. And get release is used here. So I think I messed something up. I probably did mess something up, but don't worry about it. I just messed up the thing. Okay, so actually this is exactly what I wanted, so it's okay. So we have this, and let's just restart this. I bet you there's errors because I didn't mutate that thing. Dot as object. So of course I'm getting some semicolon errors. So just make sure you have your semicolon errors taken care of. And of course I have to import the hash map. So make sure you're importing the hash map. I guess you could skip a lot of this video because if you are not doing the tary updater, I think you're good now, but you can just see it. So remove suffix is not found in the scope. So remove suffix is actually a helper function. So you can add your helper function in another file, or I will just add it here. And there we go. Okay, and what else is there? As you can see, Rust Analyzer actually takes care of a lot of these errors, so not found in the scope. Of course, it's not found. It's because I didn't rename it. So for some reason, I didn't have to use the mutation. So this is string reference, and it's causing a bunch of errors now. And maybe it is finally because of that mutation here. This function takes in one argument, but two are supplied. So that is pretty funny. So it probably is the object as mute. So as object mute. Okay, expected immutable reference, found struct string. So let me actually make this a mutable object as well. Oh, I got it. My bad. It's because we didn't put the question mark Okay, that's actually embarrassing for me. But hey, at least guys know what the error is. You gotta be really good at knowing how to use these errors. So response platforms is an and reference. So the data it refers to cannot be bored as immutable. So there we go. We actually do need to use it as immutable, and probably gonna find issues again. Cannot borrow as mutable. So of course I think it was a good idea for me to use mutable here the first time. And as you can see, there were errors if you don't use mutable there. So that was the entire point anyways. And now we get this, so we can test this out. Things fail. And there we go. We have an API Towery updated response. But if I refetch it, you can see that it took a second. It wasn't instantaneous. It took a bit longer, and you might not notice it, but it's just that the requests are so fast to GitHub that I'll do it again. I don't want to get rate limited, but to avoid rate limiting, you want to cache the result, which is what we're going to be doing in the next video. But this video was about how do you create a JSON response from scratch, which I've done. We abstracted a lot of the information to avoid these error handling situations where you have to return multiple error types and do a bunch of annoying things. So to avoid having to return a struct error, a custom error, you should just handle every function, everything that returns the same kind of error or same option should be abstracted into its own function like I did. So I did create Towery response and get latest release. So as you can see, it all worked out in the end. So yeah, I will see you in the next video, which will be how do you add caching to this function. Create Towery, not get latest release. How do we cache get latest release? Okay. And yeah, I will see you in the next one.